All right, and we are officially recording, so I'll go ahead and get us started. First and foremost, we want to welcome you all to our series, Unlocking Success Navigating Your Technical Interview. My name is Alyssa Laskowski, and I work on the SNHU Career Services team. And my role is to partner with academic faculty and staff to host workshops like this one today. So, for those who are in the audience, please feel free to utilize the chat box to say hello. Some general housekeeping rules: this webinar is being recorded. So those in the audience are not required to take any notes, but of course you are welcome to do so. All attendees will receive a follow-up email with links to any additional resources discussed today, as well as a link to this particular recording. Some other housekeeping items as well. All attendees' microphones and cameras have been turned off. Again, Jung and I have added today's LeetCode run-through link that's here in the chat. So again, if you prefer to code alongside us today, you will need to sign up beforehand. So please feel free to do that now if you'd like. Otherwise, you can simply watch Jung's LeetCode demo that will be right here on the screen. And of course, your experience at SNHU is very important to us. It is our policy and practice to create an inclusive and accessible learning environment. If there are aspects of this presentation's design or delivery that present barriers to accessibility, please notify the appropriate accessibility centers. So if you're an online student, you can email oac@snhu.edu or call 866-305-9430. If you are a campus student, you can email cac@snhu.edu or call 603-644-3118. If you're faculty or staff, you can simply email hr@snhu.edu. And lastly, for security and legal reasons, please note that participants' use of any AI tool during this event, including Read AI, is prohibited. And now I'd like to introduce our speaker for today's session, Dean Jung Yoon. He is an Associate Dean of Computer Science at Southern New Hampshire University. He's a full stack engineer with extensive experience in software development. He's a lead instructor with extensive background in education and development. And he received his Master's of Science in Computer Science in 2024 from the Georgia Institute of Technology. We are thrilled to have him present today. So without further ado, Jung, I will turn things over to you now.
Thank you very much, Alyssa. And for all of you clapping, please don't do that. I get nervous. I'm scared. So, first of all, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining. And I want to first take a pause and, applaud all of you for joining this. With, I know that all of your time is valuable. All of you have so many different work schedules, family, and life going outside of the university at the moment. So the fact that you took most likely perhaps your what was it, your lunch break to join this highlights just how much you care about succeeding in, whether it's transitioning your careers or joining for the first time in the tech industry. Uh, we want to just take a moment to applaud all of your, dedication to learning. And, my hope when Alyssa and I created the series is to help you understand and reduce or demystify what these technical interviews are like, and hopefully give you some tips and tricks as well to get you at navigating through these parts. Now, I just want to make it clear, this portion is much more on the CS side of things for sure. It's much more on what the coding interviews look like. But even if you're coming from different departments, there are elements to this that you can really take out of, especially the overarching lessons. So if you do want to stick around, I do highly encourage it. So with that being said, I want to just start off with the recap of our technical interviews part one that we had, which was a overarching review of what are interviews like in the tech sector, right? So we talked kind of about the different aspects of the technical interviews, right? A phone call that can be a behavioral interview, or coding challenges thereafter that you may have to do over the phone, and then actual coding challenges that we'll be doing today, or building out, we'll say, MVPs for anybody who was here during part one. MVPs does not mean most valuable player. It means minimum viable product. We're basically building out a small application to prove, hey, you know what you're doing here, or similar or very commonplace multiple choice question coding quizzes that you can have as well, or submitting real projects. So these are some of the different aspects of interviews that we discussed. And in this particular one, we're looking to explore more on the first portion you see on the second bullet point, which is the coding challenge interviews. So I want to take a quick poll, and Alyssa's going to help me out here a little bit. So out of curiosity, how many of you have actually tried to submitted your resume and tried out a coding interview in real time? Has anybody had a chance to do that yet? So you may have gotten a little poll just shown up. You've done some? All right, all right. Hold on. We're MVPing this out a little bit, so okay.
Sorry, my polls seem to have disappeared.
I know, right?
Of course, that's usually how it always goes, right before it was showing up and now it's not.
No worries.
But no
Live demo,
worries
live
here.
demo. What I want to, this is a good example of what you can encounter at workplace. If you ever are demoing a product at work, things will break. So this is
Hmm.
pretty normal. But all right, so I see a lot of you are typing into chat, so thank you so much for your flexibility. I see Anthony said he's done a couple, twice for Dimitri, no for Khalifa, Robert, David, Alan, Diana. And again, if I'm butchering your names, I do apologize. Oh, there we go. So have you ever completed a live coding interview? If you could just click yes or no in that poll, we'll greatly appreciate it. Too nervous too? That's normal. That is super normal. So let's just see. We'll give it about 30 seconds for all of you to just click yes or no on that.
And so far, out of the 31 plus responses, majority is no. They have
Yeah.
not completed a coding interview.
And I like to reiterate, that is really normal, everybody. And for Jarek, Colin, Emil, for all of you mentioning it, I'm going to ask all of you here, and this is without the poll. How many of you are nervous about the technical interview, especially haven't done it yet? For those 27 who have not yet done it, how many of you are nervous, scared, anxious, all of that, right? So that is super duper normal, everybody. Okay. It's almost, I guess I'll say it this way. It's very akin to all of you, and I'm going a little longer here because I want to make sure all of you are okay emotionally. Is that okay? Robert, happy, excited. Okay, he's the outlier. Okay, we'll say he's the outlier, but I'm glad he's happy and excited because that means he can prove his best. But think of these interviews as the following, right? It's that you're kind of putting yourself out there and you're basically almost taking a test in real time to demonstrate what you've learned at a university. And there's a lot on the line for all of you, right? It's about, you know, can I get this job? Would I be able to, get the salary that I desire? There's a lot of these external thoughts going into this, which is why I always want to say it this way, which is feeling nervous at an interview, or especially these coding challenges, is the norm. You're not weird. You're not the outlier. I told you Robert's the outlier for being happy and excited, but it is a very normal, natural step of this. So the intent of this and what you'll hear from me later on, which is practice, 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 is to, by constantly exposing yourself to what type of questions you may encounter and what platform you may be doing it in, and then just going through the steps of solving these types of questions, and by helping you normalize it, we're trying to reduce that level of nervousness and anxiety down a couple of notches, right? Because again, it is really natural to feel nervous. A small example is when I used to lead a team of engineers at work, you have to present the product that you developed out to your stakeholders, right? Big, directors and suits and all that, right? So when you have to present these, my group of engineers, they're brilliant at coding, but they get really nervous at presenting. So literally part of my job, and I don't know why I did this, I don't get paid enough for that, but was I would develop these slideshows and I would write a script for them and we would practice, about a week before we had to present our the features we built out for our stakeholders. And we would show it to them and say, hey, by this is what we built. And because we went through the motions of practicing and again, they were less stressed. They were less anxious. They were less anxious and nervous. We're doing the same here. I'm going to present to you what a coding challenge interview may look like, which is a way for them to see, do you have your technical acumen down pat? How are your technical skills and all of that? And give you some tips and tricks on how to approach solving that problem. And then thereafter, I'm going to have all of you obviously go home and practice it yourself, right? How many times you should practice a day and so on and so forth. So that's the angle of what today's session will be about. And I hope, again, you all understand the intent of this webinar series, especially this one. Let's get you familiar with the unknown, reduce your anxiety levels, and figure out techniques and ways for you to be able to go into these steps with confidence so that you can put your best foot forward, if that's how the American idiom goes, so that you can succeed in your interviews. All right. So with that being said, I believe, yes, Alyssa has already dropped it in. So Alyssa, if you don't mind, may I share my screen, please? Okay. Thank you. Thank you. All right. So if y'all don't mind giving me a thumbs up, I think there's a little react button here on Teams. Let's give me a thumbs up if y'all can see my screen. All right. Thank you, Jarek. Okay, perfect, perfect. So ignore my blown up ugly face. I, I don't like taking photos, okay? But this is a question off of LeetCode.com. It is the easy question, and it is called the two-sum challenge. Okay? Now, if you were here during part 1, you might have seen a glimpse of this question. But I want to make sure we take the time to break down what exactly we're looking at here today. Okay. So when you do a coding interview question, they will most likely give you two, at least pre-COVID, what they used to give was about 2 of these questions. And based on the company, easy, medium, hard difficulties, you would get about 90 minutes, so 45 minutes per question of these to solve. And you would have to submit them, and they would have to succeed in passing what are called test cases. So in this example, there are, I believe when I ran it, there are about 63 inputs that they are going to give to you, and you must provide the output for all 63. Now, obviously, we don't know what these inputs are going to look like. So the intent of these coding interviews are, can you create a software that can handle these unknown inputs and generate the output that is expected? And also, if you see me looking this way, I'm looking at all of you right now and your chat. So feel free to type it at any time. I'll also be able to read it. Okay. So the reason why I'm saying this is that, remember, when we develop a product at work, we have to account for all different types of user inputs, right? So whenever these type of coding questions come up, and you might have heard this term, especially if you're graduating, we have a course on it called data structure and algorithms. That is what they're trying to test. Do you understand your data structures, and do you understand your algorithms as well? All right. So what should I do first when I come across this page? First of all, you panic for about 30 seconds because that's pretty normal. And then you take a deep breath in, deep breath out, and you start by reading through what is being asked of you. So you'll see, I actually just like straight up close out all the other sections. Do you see that? Now you can do this in LeetCode. You cannot do this in, I believe, other platforms, but I hope you get the picture. And I'm going to first start off by reading through the question. Okay. Now, during this, I'm not going to get super technical. You will see me technically code, but I'm not going to ask all of you to know, what enumerate means and all that, because everybody's at different levels. So try to get the big picture out as much as you can, right? So given an array of integers called nums and an integer named target, return the indexes of the 2 numbers such as they add up to that integer target. You may assume that each input would have exactly 1 solution, and you may not use the same element twice. You can return the answer in any order. All right, so from a show of hands, how many of you fully understood every single nuance of what was being asked? Just use the React feature or the raise feature, right? How many of you understood, right, every single line? Okay, 1, 2, that's good. 3, 4. Okay, good. So it looks like a couple of us were able to understand what the question was asking. And that's perfect. But for the others that they understand, that's again pretty normal. So let's take the time to, and this is the first step you should do whenever you do these coding interview challenges, deconstruct what the question is asking. So at least what I know is this. Whenever I see the word return, right? Remember, what does return mean in coding? It's a keyword. It means to generate an output out of a function, basically, right, everybody? We need to return something of the two numbers so that they add up to the word target. Now, I still don't understand what target is, right? What I do know is that I need to give it exactly one solution, right? Because every single input will lead to one solution. And I may not use the same element twice. Again, I'm kind of sitting here scratching my non-existent beard. What does element mean here? So let's say you're like a little iffy on what the question is asking. What's pretty normal to do is then, and most interview questions will have this, they will give you examples of what it looks like. So let's go ahead and take a look at the examples. Let's use some visual cues to see if I understand what the question's asking. So here, all right, there we go. There's that word nums, which we do highlight here in the first sentence of the question. And it looks like brackets, and it has 2, 7, 11, 15. So if you have some coding experience, you know what this is. If you don't, just to explain, this is what is called an array. And based on different languages, you might have come across vectors, array list, right? Whatever have you. But it's a way for us to store multiple values or elements in a single variable. Okay. So we see that there's a variable called nums, and it stores 4 different values: the number 2, the number 7, number 11, number 15, separated by commas. And again, we know these are integers or numbers because they don't have quotation marks around them. For those of you who are in my CS class program, hopefully that makes sense so far. Nothing super crazy out of the norm so far. And then there's another word, target. Again, that's the word we see here in the interview. And it's equal to 9. And they said that the output is 0, 1. Now, hold up a minute. I'm going to pause here for a second. We're in that first input. Does anybody see the numbers 0 and 1 at all in that initial array? Do we see the numbers 0 and 1? Anybody? No, sir, I don't think I'm that old. And Robert, if you're raising a hand to answer verbally, sorry, we have all the voices turned off. I do apologize. Yes, just so please feel to type it. But yes, correct. And Damon answered it correctly, and Elliot answered it with the proper terminology, but I'm going to leave with Damon real quick. Correct. These are the positions of the numbers in the array. And we call these positions, as Elliot pointed out correctly, the indexes, right? Which is, hey, again, that's the other word that we see in the first sentence of the question. So hopefully what I'm demonstrating here as we go back and forth is, do we need to know a lot of the terminologies that we learned throughout our CS program? Yes. But at the same time, do you see how if I didn't fully understand the text of the question being asked, I could leverage the examples to help me get a better gauge of what I need to do. Does that make sense so far? This back and forth, everybody? So in the explanation that they give you, because nums bracket 0, right? Again, this is the position. What's in the 0 index is the number 2. What is the number held in position 1? The number 7. What is 2 plus 7? It's 9. So what is the answer? We need to return an array with the indexes of 0, 1. Now, that's the other interesting thing, if you noticed, right? Take a relook at the question. Does it ever mention that you need to return the array of the indexes of the two numbers? It didn't, right? So again, taking a look at these examples can be a great way for you to confirm what needs to be done. And the other thing for all of you is that in some of these type of coding interviews, you may actually have the interviewer be on call with you, especially with the rampant use of AI these days. So If this was not clear, that's another great way for you to leverage the thoroughness when it comes to coding, which is you can ask, hey, I notice here we want to return the indexes of the two numbers. Do I need to return them like do I need to return it in an object or a dictionary? Or do I need to return it in a immutable array, like based on the language you're using? So by asking these type of questions, you're demonstrating to the instructor, hey, I'm really looking at the nitty-gritties here, right? So do I need to return an array or not, right? So that's another great way for the interviewer to know, oh, wow, this candidate really thinks the problem through, cares about the nuances. So always think about asking these clarifying questions within the first 5 to 10 minutes as you digest what this question is all about. So it looks like we return an answer array and store the potential using a temp variable. Ooh, that sounds like something you could do, but that's jumping ahead, right? But all right, so I think I spent like a solid 5-10 minutes just talking, just making sure I understood the question, that I looked through the examples to verify or validate that I understand what I'm asking for. And especially for more complex, medium to hard difficulty questions, map's another good one. We can look at the constraints as well, especially for questions that are much more focused on time sensitivity, like how optimized is your code. Make sure you take a look at the constraints to understand like how much data set you're working through. For example, you may have a question that you need to implement a faster sorting algorithm, right? And this is getting a little bit more technical, right? You may want to pay attention to the amount of data sets that you have access available to iterate through, right? So you can choose and determine what sort of algorithm you want, or what sort of sorting algorithm you may want to implement. Okay, does that make sense? And for those of you who are in your DSA courses or your data structure and algorithm courses, make sure you understand your big O notations. That's another big one you can talk about. All right. So, and if you do have questions, keep typing it in. I'll try to answer them. So let's say, okay, I think I have a good understanding. I think I'm vibing. I think I know how I want to, I think I know what I need to answer. So what do I do next? For my IT 140 students out there, and please let me know if this is hard to read. I'll try to zoom in. Now I'm going to write this in Python just to keep it as easy to access for a few people as much as we can. IT 140 is Python's kind of the first language most students learn in our bachelor's program. Is pseudocode, pseudocode, pseudocode. Now I'm not asking you to be like, write everything like, how we do, like, and like while, and like, I'm not asking you to get like that technical here. But what I mean by pseudocoding here is just like how I think what was it, Elliot wrote it in. Can you kind of envision out what your code should look like before actually trying to make it work, right? So for example, I can say, all right, I need to have a way to, I don't know, store the values that I access when I iterate through the list. Iterating means, right, to loop through. Oh, I just said it. So maybe I have to write a for loop, right? So you want to try to kind of, whether it's in comments or talking out loud, right, the rubber ducky method, try to think through what your actual solution should look like. Now, especially if there's an interviewer interviewing with you, this is a really important skill that we'll talk more about in part 3, which is the whiteboarding session. Remember, these interviews are not just about you getting things right. It's also, especially for what we call freshers, which are undergraduate students who just graduated and haven't had a coding experience job yet. We expect our freshers to not know everything. That's normal. But what we do want to know is your thinking process. How do you think the problems through? So these type of comments, especially if you have an interviewer and you're talking to them, you want to just talk this problem through. Hey, I think I need to write a for loop, but oh man, how do I know I need to return, right, an array or a list or an, right, because we saw this here. So I know this has to exist somewhere, right? So do you see how I'm just kind of talking my problem through. I'm trying to kind of see what is my thought process for this code to be. And because let's say Elliot was my interviewer and they said, hey, we need to store a temp variable. Okay, that's a great idea. Maybe I create a variable called like, I don't know, to some, and how you create your variables also just depends on the language that you use, right? And then maybe I make some kind of temp variable. Oh man, how do I want to access or store these, right? What if I leveraged an object or a dictionary or a map, right? Like I'm just talking my problems through. So do you see I'm not like kind of all-inning, or I'm not really locking in the answer that I think is correct. All I'm doing is just trying to think through the problem. So I know I have to write a for loop. Okay, I definitely don't want to put my temp variable inside the for loop, right? We just want to have it locked in. So maybe I move it outside. And then I want to iterate through the for loop of the nums array or list. Okay. And then here's where the algorithm question comes out, right, everybody? And this is where math comes into play. That's right. If you're going to be in our Bachelor's of Computer Science program, what do you need? Math. So let's take a look at this example here, everybody. If we go through a for loop, the first number is what? The number 2. Do we all agree with that? How do we know what's the next number we need to add up to the target number 9? So I know in the first example, the number is 2. How do I figure out what is the second number to add up to 9? Alan, say it with confidence. Is it 9 minus 2 period, or is it a question mark? Oh, yeah, we're not getting into all that fancy stuff yet, right? But remember, this is just thinking the problem through. Correct. How do we know what the remaining value has to be? It's just going to be 9 minus 2. Now, for Alan and for everybody else here, I think you're getting, and especially David, right? We know for a fact that we cannot guarantee that the target will always be 9 or the target will always be 6. Do we all agree with that? We also cannot guarantee that the first number will always be 2 or 3 or whatever have you. So we need to now create a program, right, that will allow us to keep track of the numbers we're going through. So maybe we create a temp variable inside the for loop. And it will subtract the target. And where am I getting that word target from, everybody? That's the variable that they give to us, right? Or, the argument, but you get the picture. Target minus whatever the internal number or element we're going to iterate through. And if that remaining number, right, matches to anything in our loop, we return the indexes of those numbers. Did I write any actual code in this thought process? All I did was just think the problem through. Do you all agree with that? So about 5-ish minutes of understanding what the question looks like, making sure you understand the examples. And then another maybe 5-10 minutes of me just thinking the problem through. And yes, I do have quite, let me make sure I talk the Zoomer talk. Yas Queen, I have the right pseudocoding here in the comments. So we're making sure that we truly understood what each of the steps needed I want to go through so that when I get to coding, at least I have a clear understanding of what program I want to design. I'm going to go ahead and copy this portion first into the chat as I'm going to kind of delete these comments for the sake of, actually writing out the next set of code. So if you would like to access that, I just post it into the chat. All right. So with that being said, let's go ahead and try to write it out. Now, again, as I write this out, I'm not testing all of your Python skills, okay? So please don't, get sweaty into the nitty gritty about, do I understand every single line? This is all about approaching how to programmatically think these through. So this next step, right? So sat there, understood the question, looked through the example, pseudocoded it out. My next step is called the brute force method. So that's what we're going to do. I do not care, especially when I'm coding this for the first time, how efficient it is, how ugly or pretty it is. I just want to get it to work. Thumbs up. That's all I want. So we're going to do this. We're going to say, we're going to create that. We're going to create a temp variable. We'll say temp dictionary equals an empty dictionary or object or map. And then this is a Python thing. So Python, right this way. So this is a generic Python loop, right? We're going to iterate through the list of that is provided to us called nums, and I represents each value in that array. But because we want to store these in our dictionary or array, we're going to leverage something called enumerate, which allows us to access the index number, and this is now the index number, and this num variable represents the actual value held inside. Okay. So if I were to do this and return num, you're going to see the numbers of 2, 7, 11, 15 return. If I return I, you're going to see the indexes of 0, 1, 2, 3. And do we all agree the index is important here? Why? Because we're looking to return the positions or indexes of where the numbers are stored. That's the solution. All right. So from here, we're going to, remember we said, hey, whatever the remaining values are, I'm going to subtract the target from the number. If we do this, what do you know? We know that the value has to be accessed, right? This is the remaining value we want to see. Nice job, Robert. And then we're going to say if that remaining number is inside of that dictionary. So why do we need to do this? This is because of that extra condition they had here that I didn't take into account. You may assume that each input would have exactly one solution, and you may not use the same element twice. So we want to ensure that the values are what we iterate through. Right? These are fresh values. And if everything looks good, we're going to return a list or an array. And in that list or array, we're going to return, that value and the index. Now, this is going to return the index value. And how I'm going to set that up to return that should be num there. CI. In this section, just so you all understand, what we're saying is whatever the value may be, which is, we'll say the key is going to be the number 2, the I is going to represent the index number. And yes, in Python, it's going to look something like this, but hopefully you'll slightly see the picture. And the reason behind this is why we're not interested in the actual values. We're interested in the indexes of those values. And if you want to be thorough, right? If there are no solutions, we're just going to return the empty list. You can also add as well. I just think of it this way. Generally, if we subtract it, we have a better understanding or gauge of like, hey, we know what target, what's the remaining number to go to. So that's why. Oh. Oh no, I said map there, sorry. And there you go. Green check marks generally mean good things. And if you're doing this, most interviews also do this as well. Pressing play lets you see the sample cases, which are these the same numbers you see in the examples, everybody? 2, 7, 9, 15, 3, 2, 4, right? 6, 6, 3, 3, there you go. And then if you click the submit button, just drag over here. Does everybody see this section here? It says there's 63 test cases. So you can always, right, there are going to be these hidden other inputs that you can't see. And in more medium and hardcore questions, there will be what we call edge cases, considerations that you may not have thought about that you would have to account for. So you click submit, and then you may fail 5, so you can go back and update and so on and so forth. Generally, most interviews, it's not like one of those you can only submit once and you're done kind of thing. So you do have some flexibility there. All right. So this is the brute force method, which is I don't care about optimizations. I don't care about best practices. I don't care about validations and error handling. I just want it to work. And this is the majority of your time spent. Now, if you're an amazing programmer, or it's not even really being an amazing programmer, it's, you have seen that question before. I've had engineers who just literally LeetCoded 5 times a day and then just memorized all their questions and just answered it, right? If you get comfortable doing these things and you're able to answer these pretty quickly, the next thing you can really do to make yourself stand out is, and here, I'll copy paste this in as well if you'd like it. The next step is to do something called following best practices. Now, obviously for LeetCode, this is unnecessary, but for an interview practice, don't you think they would feel really happy if they saw something as simple as and please make sure it runs. Don't just assume. Correct. Try catch block. What does a try catch block do? For those of you who've been around, right? A try catch blocks just simply catches any runtime potential compile or runtime error so that your entire program doesn't break. In Python, they call it try except. I know. So just bear with that. And what was it, Peter? I'll get back to your question in just a bit, okay? Because it's a little out of scope. But to be honest, right? Does a LeetCode practice problem need this level of thoroughness? No. But during an interview, this shows what? That you care about the little nuances, that you care about robustness of your code, and you want to make sure that if a runtime error occurs, it doesn't break the rest of your code and it simply catches the error, and then you can maybe write like a logger and all these other things. Are we cool with that? Yes, we're almost done. And then the final portion, and this one I will just copy paste it in because it's longer. Another thing you can do is you can add validation to ensure that the numbers will always be integers. Right, everybody? What does that mean? Yes, we know from this level they're going to be integers, but again, in real life, you can't always validate that your users will provide integer values. So again, is this level of detail necessary at a practice level? No. But having or thinking about adding these things is what really separates out my junior engineers and my freshers from those who are more experienced. So I'm going to go ahead and paste this in. And actually, thank God that was exactly right on time. So with that being said, Alyssa, may I give the screen share back to you for the next slide?
Yes, please. Here we go.
All right. So that's kind of what we reviewed over. Number one, make sure you understand the question and analyze what the ask is. Number two, when in doubt, pseudocode it out, right? Figure out what the potential solution is without really locking in or writing down all the code and kind of going through that, you know, frustrations of errors and all of that. And once you generally have a good idea of what the question you want to answer solution is, then you focus on just brute forcing the solution, right? Just care about getting it to work. Don't care about efficiencies, optimizations, and none of that. I forgot to mention add comments to clearly outline your thought process, but you've seen me add comments throughout my writing, so hopefully that highlights the importance of that. And then finally, include best practices to further refine your code if time is allotted, such as validators, error handling, and all these good techniques you might have learned throughout your bachelor's program. So all of these is really, really important. Yes, some interviewers will ask what your big O notation is, which was that last section at the bottom of that interview. So again, if you have gone through your CS300 course, that is something you should be able to talk about. And based on how much time you have left over, if you have a physical interviewer, they might ask, can you think of a different solution that would help optimize it even further, right? In terms of your time complexity. So just other things to balance. But for my juniors for now, I just want to focus on just getting it to run before anything else. All right. So for the next slide, was it? You can always find additional tools to help you practice for these. So think of things such as HackerRank, which is a pretty common one. Interviewing.io is another common one. I personally would recommend the book called Cracking the Coding Interview by Gail Lackman McDowell. I just want to make sure to highlight that the book is like 400 pages long, or it got longer, but the first 100 pages is actually the content. The rest are answers because all the book is all about are interview questions. Now, the only caveat is it is written in Java, but if you do literally type into the computer, if you type into the internet, cracking the coding interview solutions in whatever language you prefer, you'll find people who has those answers online. But I do highly recommend using that. And then I want to pass the mic over to Alyssa about the rest for the Career 360 stuff.
Awesome. Thanks, Jung. This was a really, really great session. And I truly think you've shared some really helpful tips and insights for those who are in our audience today. So thank you for that. So for those in the audience, you are probably thinking, well, where can I find all of these technical interview related resources? And we have got you covered. Everything is housed in one spot on our SNHU Career Services website, Career 360. We have specific STEM career pages where you can browse resources based on your major, including these technical interview resources. We also have resume templates and tips, tips on creating your portfolio guides, and so much more. And lastly, we have a really great resource known as Skills First. Skills First is SNHU's free career tool building platform for SNHU students and alumni. So students can use Skills First to complete practice interviews for or based on real jobs. You can also use it to create or build your resume or cover letter, to create your portfolio. You can even take a career assessment, and so much more. So I did add a few of those links here into the chat so that you can go ahead and explore. And so for now, I will turn things back to Jung for a quick sneak peek at our final session that's taking place on December 16th.
Okay. Thank you, Alyssa. So our final of our three-part seminar is going to take place December 16th, which is next Tuesday at 12 p.m. Eastern. And we're going to tackle the final portion of these type of interviews, which is called whiteboarding interviews. And whiteboarding is more than just about just writing the code like you just did. This is more about the interview is wanting to understand how you think the problems through. So we're also going to do another live demo of this and share some additional resources. So if you're the type not just nervous about, just like all of you, nervous about getting the code to run, but speaking in front of a panel of interviewers and convincing them that you know what you're talking about, I do highly recommend doing this one, joining this session as well. And hopefully I can see all of you back again next time. Right. And then Yes, Alyssa.
Perfect, Jung. I'll go ahead and close us out before we get to our open Q&A session. Just want to go over again some of those quick reminders. So as Jung mentioned, please make sure to register to join us for part three or session three that's taking place on December 16th at 12 p.m. Eastern Time. This will be our final session for this entire Unlocking Success, Navigating Your Technical Interview series. So that link, you can find it directly in the chat right now. I also encourage those in the audience to register to attend this week's Hour of Code, which is taking place December 9th through the 12th, so this week, which is our week long celebration of all things computer science and coding. This is your chance to hear from panel experts on careers in computer science, and you also get the chance to join your peers as well as other faculty members for daily coding games, activities, and sessions, and tons of fun. All students of all skill levels are welcome. So I'm going to be adding the link to that here in the chat momentarily. So take a look at the upcoming schedule of events for Hour of Code. Again, we have a kickoff panel that's taking place tomorrow afternoon, and then you'll be able to see throughout the rest of the week, the 9th through the 12th, there are sessions happening at certain times of day. So again, each session is roughly about an hour, and you'll be able to join our faculty for some really fun coding games. So take a look, register for opportunities or sessions that you're able to attend. So with that, it is now our time for Q&A. So attendees, you can type your questions directly into the chat and we will just simply read those questions aloud. While we can't guarantee that we'll get to every question here in the next 10 minutes, we will do our very best. So go ahead and please type your questions into the chat now.
All right, so let me try to get through them as speed rush time. So Peter asked, and this is to speak, I'm going to speak out loud for the recording. Peter Bartel asks, I've seen some AI tools that can assist with coding recently, such as Canva and Microsoft Copilot. Of course, in working interviews, we absolutely do not want to use them, but what's curious to what extent are these helpful in your day-to-day work? They are tremendously helpful, but what I always like to kind of say is, and this is coming from an Dean perspective and also as a programmer perspective, is that if you are beginning and straight new into especially the technical aspect of learning, ChatGPT or other AI generated tools can be really, really addicting. They are great about giving you really solid confidences, and if you over rely on them in the beginning of your journey and your career, you will become dependent on them. So if you once you kind of get to know your topic and know your stuff, you know kind of when to call AIs about the crazy solutions they give you and such to balance them. So when you become that mid-level senior engineering level, you can use them pretty extensively. It's easier than Googling stuff sometimes or parsing through open issue tickets on GitHub. Trust me, that's a pain. So it is great for those type of exposures, but so we do use them a lot. It's just I always caution folks of over relying on them, especially at the beginning of your careers, because it can impede on your growth progress down the road. All right, Cody asked, thank you very much, Jung and Alyssa. I have a quick question left over from the first session. Oh, yeah, 어디 how important, sorry, I speak Korean sometimes. How important do you think an internship is for someone with a full-time job transitioning from a different career field? I think it's really important if you can get internships in, but I always say that on an academic sense. Here's my other response to that, which is uh, finances. You know, if you have family, if you have other responsibility and obligations, and it's difficult to take that risk, it is totally understandable. You have to do it within the confines of your current like lifestyle and your current
Mhm.
day-to-day responsibilities. So, you
I
know,
agree. I was just
making
going to
that shift is
echo that
scary. Yeah.
exact sentiment. So think of it more in the lens of gaining experience versus taking on a traditional maybe internship program. Um, so in that vein, if like for example, many of our students here are, as Jung mentioned, like full-time employees, they're maybe full-time caregivers, so it's not really in your time or bandwidth to take on a traditional 40-hour internship program that might take several months to complete. But that's not to say that you can't find additional ways to gain experience so that future employers see you as a viable candidate for someone who has kind of that hands-on experience. So, Cody, for you, I specifically put in the chat, and this is open for all. We have a dedicated section right in our Career 360 STEM page that literally is how to gain experience for your STEM career that outlines all of the additional outside options that are could be available to you to explore that is outside that traditional internship kind of program. Now, Not to say for those, again, it is up to you to be able to kind of decipher what your bandwidth is, what your time management is, and if an internship fits within that space, go for it. We've got lots of great opportunities for you to search and apply for internships. You can find them directly actually on Career 360 as well. So you can explore those options and apply away. But, again, if it's not in a bandwidth of yours that makes the most sense, don't be discouraged. There are lots of ways for you to still find those opportunities to gain experience, maybe through mini projects, mini internships, volunteer work, hackathons, you name it. There's lots of ways that you can demonstrate and up your skills for future opportunities. So I hope that that's helpful.
Thank you, Alyssa. And yes, and to piggyback off that, I'm actually going to lean on, I'm going to skip over Collins real quick because there's, oh yeah, I'll do this. Oh, I'm gonna skip over Collins real quick. Alan, which is, what would your advice be about combating not having any experience other than SNHU to get your foot in the door anywhere in the software development field? So we're kind of piggybacking off of that because they're kind of tied together. The really cool thing about it, especially working in this industry, is you can build your own projects. So one of the sample cases that I shared with all of you during part one of this session is that one of my students was a father to a newborn child. And what was it? Uh, apparently, don't quote me, I'm not married yet, is that when you have a kid, uh, you need to keep track of their burping to tell the doctors. I don't know why. So I've been told when he was pitching this idea to me, he was like, I want to build an app where basically, on their phone, they can click a button, it'll update on the database, and then that way they get basically a calendar dashboard of how many times the baby burped throughout the month. And it'll take that data back to the doctor and say, hey, this is how many times my baby burped. Are they healthy? Are they Gucci gang or not? Right? So in that little fun example, and then they shared it with their other friends who were getting married and having newborn babies and all of that, right? Basically, the really cool thing about the sector is, if you have the time, you can build out your own projects, your own passion projects, and add them to your portfolio and your resume, right? To help demonstrate to those who are looking to hire you that you have these competencies and skills, right? Build these projects, post them on GitHub, write a Medium article about it, post them on LinkedIn. You can create these visibilities, and yes, it will take time. It definitely is an increment. But the thing about this sector is you can't really rush towards things. You have to just slowly build up your credentials by little pieces at a time. And once you get to a certain point, you'll have a ton of experience under your belt that you can show off to your potential employers. So hopefully that helps a little bit more, Alan, and Cody as well, about this whole how do I navigate in this industry. And then going back to Colin, which is Colin asked, for technical assessments, if you have multiple questions, should you focus on the question you're working on if you're stuck, or move on? That one I kind of answered in the chat, but I kind of want to change a little bit, which is, for me personally, I like to move on because I always kind of think about that question I skipped in the back of my head. And then as I solve through the next set of questions, I kind of have like that aha moment, and then I kind of go back and redo it. So that is how I generally would recommend it, but everybody has different approaches to how they code and solve problems. So, I'd say best fits you. Maybe try it out and see if you feel like you're benefiting more from that. I've always just found that, especially for multiple choice questions for tech assessments, they sometimes give the answer out for the previous question like 15 questions down the line. So I'll just like take a look at that. All right. It looks like the questions have slowed down, which is good. A very blatant self-advertisement is that on December 11th, I am also hosting an hour of code session with one of my adjuncts, one of the professors here. And it is going to be introducing students how to code with Cursor AI. We are going to keep it very high level because Hour of Code attracts a whole bunch of students, not just CS students. But if you are interested in maybe getting a easy introduction into, how to use Cursor for code generation, debugging, and explanation, please feel free to join. I'll probably be more in the back end answering questions in the chat, but the adjunct that I'm working with is amazing. So if you would like to get some insights into developing with AI, we are hosting that again. That is the December 11th session from 10:30 to 11:30 a.m. Eastern. Whew, okay, any other questions? I think I got all of them.
I think we've got all of them. I was trying to scroll back. I don't think we missed
Yeah.
any. But again, we've got a few more minutes here. If not, we can conclude a little bit early. As Jung alluded to, please make sure to register for part 3 and the hour of code sessions as well. Oh, looks like we did get one more.
Yes.
Um, from Adam, he noted, at what point should you start looking for internships? I have not yet started any of my major CS classes yet. Um, yeah, Jung, if you want to shoot,
I,
go for this one first, and I'll follow up.
yeah. I would personally say at least take a few. So
Mhm.
this kind of goes to my what's that word called? Alyssa? Shoot nuggets. General idea on job searching. Sorry, English is not my first language, which
Mhm.
is if you apply and they reject you, does that really hurt you other than your ego? Just apply. So I would generally recommend, at least in terms of internships, um, at least up to CS 210. So you should have taken IT 140, 145, DAD 220, and maybe CS 210 and complete that. You should be at an okay starting point to start getting some internship experience. Obviously, the more CS courses you take, the better, but you should have some fundamental understanding of programming before you get there so that you're able to um, meet the responsibilities of that internship. But the reason why it's a little hard for me to say is because all internships can vary. Some
Mhm.
internships I've seen is literally just know HTML and CSS and you're good. So you're just designing UI on the website. Some others might be more getting into like, we need you to create a CRUD application with meeting RESTful, what was it, RESTful API protocol so that, uh, you know, we're able to serve directly to the consumer. So then you might be like, okay, let me complete a little bit more so I understand what those words mean so that I could do that.
Mhm.
So just be kind of flexible about that.
Yeah,
Um,
and you can even see I put it here in the
yeah.
chat too on our STEM career page on Career 360. We've included kind of a general STEM hiring timeline. So when you could be starting to expect to see employers posting internship opportunities or certain times of year, for example, in the fall. Um, they're pretty actively recruiting for filling internship positions for like the following year, et cetera. So as far as like considering your timeline too, that resource on Career 360 might be helpful in kind of you planning out when you want to start getting your application materials ready, your resume, things like that. And maybe by then you'll have, a few CS courses under your belt to give you a better idea of kind of your individual skill level. And then what are some of the internships that truly are interest to you? You don't want to just necessarily apply for the sake of getting the internship if it's truly not something you're actually interested in and or feel like you're skilled in. So um, take a look at the Career 360 page. It's got tons of information in that realm, as well as lists for internship opportunities that are currently posted that our employer partners are hiring for. So it's a really good jumping off point. We actually also have a Career 360 page that's all about internships and internship searching. So take a look at that. You'll find it under the Build Skills menu on Career 360 on the home page. So again, feel free to browse away, but it's got tons of really great resources of how you can start thinking more proactively about your internship and kind of what your plan is for that.
I think we got all of them. And I just typed in the chat for the next one because it's outside of the Snoop capacity. So I think we're good to go.
Mhm. I did see one come in if we have a minute, if we want to stick around. Looks like one question came in. This will be our wrap before we close out. Because this is specifically for you, Jung. You graduated from Georgia Tech. Any advice for people who wanted to be successful in studying at the graduate level at Georgia Tech?
Yeah. So I just okay. So I just typed in is the Georgia Tech, especially for the MSCS program, if you're interested in that, is that they will naturally assume knowledge that you might not have covered as explicitly as a prereq. So you're gonna spend a lot of time studying outside of things if you need to refresh in things. So just keep that in mind, and yes, you will not have a social life there.
Awesome. I think that's probably true for most graduate level programs. I
Yeah.
feel like, especially in the tech field, that's most when I would talk to graduate students, even PhD students, that was basically the gist. So,
Yeah.
well, with that, we are officially at time. So, thank you all again so much for being here with us, with Young and I this afternoon. As I mentioned, all attendees will receive a follow-up email with links to some of the resources we've discussed today, as well as a link to this particular recording. And this recording will also be posted on our Career 360 page, so you can find it there anytime and watch it back. So, with that, thank you all again so much for being here. Hope you all have a great rest of the day. Take care, everybody.
Thank you. Have a great evening. Bye.